Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to Geeks Watch. And today I want to talk about the film Good Will Hunting, image of which you'll see here. Eh. So there will be some spoilers because there are a couple things I want to discuss about my observations of the film itself. But before I do that, I need to kind of go over some things. This film is a great film. I am going to do like a quick overview of a good chunk of the plot. So spoiler warning right now. This film is about Will Hunting. He is a man who lives in Massachusetts. I think either in Cambridge or Boston. I can't remember which one. Anywho, he's from a poor family. He basically spends his time working as a janitor for MIT. In his spare time, he gets drunk and gets in fights with his friends and reads at night when he's alone. Will, to amuse himself, solves extremely difficult problems left on chalkboards for math students at MIT. When he's caught and confronted, he basically walks away. The math professor who thought he was vandalizing the chalkboard finds out he was solving the problem. Matt's been arrested because of a fight. The professor, Gregory, decides to, get Will out of jail on parole and on the condition of working with him and going to therapy. Will deliberately sabotages all of his therapy sessions. He's obviously a genius, obviously knows how to manipulate people. Gregory goes to his old college roommate, who was also a therapist, as a last resort. And though Will does sabotage their first therapy session, Sean agrees to take him as a client. Whilst Will is, initially highly resistant to therapy, Sean eventually breaks him down through patience, through experience, things like that. Will starts dating a girl named Skylar. Gregory gets Will a job. The NSA, National Security Agency, is very interested in hiring a mathematical genius. Will eventually winds up sabotaging almost everything. He sabotages his job, his working with Gregory, his relationship with Skylar. Pretty much the only thing he has left is his therapy sessions with Sean and his drinking and his childhood friends that he's drinking buddies with. At the end of the film, there was a climatic scene where, we learn that Will was abused as a child by his foster parents. We also learn that Sean is also abused by his father as a child. So the two have that in common. Sean really emotionally breaks Will down with compassion, with tenderness, with insistence too, but it's a very emotional scene. There's a bit more to it, Will kind of drives out the end of the film, and we kind of get the impression he's going to stop sabotaging his life. So, minor spoilers, but that's the general plot of the film. Before I get into my thoughts on this, I do want to share some backstory information. Some of the people know Ben Affleck and Matt Damon wrote the film together. Originally, it was written by Matt Damon. He wrote it for a college class. He was attending a college theater class. It was supposed to be like a short one-act play. He had like a 40-page script, and he based on his life experiences. He grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and as a kid, there was a lot of resentment as a young man for the college kids coming to town and kind of like taking things over. But then he wound up attending Harvard himself and realizing, so we kind of saw it from both sides of the equation, the young kids from Southie and, and then being a college kid too. So he kind of based some of this on his life experiences, also that, someone he knew was a janitor at the college who, and he knew this, when the kids went out and partied and made a mess and would throw up on the floors and stuff, he knew the person had to go in there and clean up after these drunk college kids. So he put a lot of his experience into this. Another thing too is that initially the NSA plotline, they weren't sure if it was going to be like a political thriller with the him being a mathematician and the NSA trying to do some funky government shit, or about the relationship with Will and Sean. They decided to scrap the political thriller aspect and really just focus on Sean and Will's relationship. Another thing I'm not sure it made it to the DVD extras. Their initial contract was with I think it was Searchlight, something like that. Their initial film company, studio that was backing them, I think it was Searchlight Studios. I just looked it up and I blanked it out. So, but they kind of, they were sending in scripts, and the film company was asking for rewrites and making suggestions, and they kind of got the impression that they weren't actually reading the rewrites that they sent in. So to kind of test them, they started writing homosexual sex scenes between Sean and and Will's character. And no one at the studio ever said anything, which kind of proved that, okay, they're not reading these. So they started looking for the company. They talked with Kevin Smith, who managed to get them with another company, whose name I can't remember. But, and when they sent the script in, they said, take out the sex scenes with Sean and Will. So they knew that they had actually read the script. Fun little tidbits here and there. All kind of interesting things. I mean, it was also unheard of to have an actor like this. Basically, this is the first thing they wrote together, the first actual script, and it took them a couple years to get it right. But when they did, it really landed solid. They did have a hard time getting funding, getting people that interested in the film. But when Robin Williams expressed interest in playing the part of the therapist Sean, that's when people started paying attention. And Robin Williams had said, another actor had told him about this script he'd heard of. Robin Williams asked for a copy of it, and he was really excited. He thought it was a great story, and he wanted to be this part. Partly because it was a different, it wasn't the same type of role he was used to playing. It was much more serious. And that's some of what I wanted to talk about too. Because one of the things that has always struck me about this film itself is the acting in it. Because there are good actors and great actors, and I know a lot of people give Ben Affleck a lot of crap. I think he's a good actor, but I don't think he's a great actor. But I base that only on the films that I've seen. Good and great actors. Some of it shows in like the range of their performance and stuff. And most of the things I've seen Ben Affleck in just don't have a lot of range. He's good at playing emotions, but I don't see the same kind of subtlety that you see in other actors. And that's one thing I wanted to talk about. I've seen several Matt Damon films, but to me, this is his best acting performance. I based it only on the films that I've seen him perform in. And I want to talk about a couple scenes that, to me, exemplifies that. One is the park scene where, Will had come in for his first session and just completely sabotage it and really pissed Sean off, to the point he threatened physical violence against Will. And, he says, meet me in the park. And Sean really kind of breaks down Will's walls a little bit and his guard, because he basically confronts Will and says, no, you're a smart person, but you don't really know anything. You're in your 20s. You've never been married. You've never left Massachusetts. You haven't experienced anything about life, that you can't read in a, stuff you can't read in a book. Sean's been married. His wife has died of cancer. He's been to war. He's a He's a Vietnam vet. I think Vietnam. They didn't say specifically, but based on the year the film came out and the age of the characters, it's like you know nothing about any of these things. You know, you've never held someone's hand and waited for them to die. You've never been to the Sistine Chapel, you know. And the reason, to me, this scene hits so hard for two reasons. I'll talk about different things later. I'll talk about the first reason first, second reason a bit later. But if you watch Matt Damon's face, you can see him lose the cockiness, lose the arrogance, and realize, oh crap, this guy's got my number. You know, this guy has seen right through me. And Sean realizes for the first time he's been outplayed, he's been outsmarted, and he's just laid bare and doesn't know what to do with it. And just the subtleties in Matt Damon's expressions as he slowly shifts his understanding, that's great acting. That's hard to do. I mean, I've done some amateur theater. I can act. I'm not really good at it. Like I said, amateur theater, I can convey certain emotions, but I don't know if I haven't done it in a very long time. Last time I did it was in high school, so yeah, it's been a while. But doing that kind of subtlety, really, really selling the emotion, you know, it's one thing to raise your voice and change the tone of your voice a little bit to match an emotion, but to really convey emotion through like subtle eye movements, subtle eyelid movements, cheek movements. There's just some, you know, that's one of the things that makes a great actor, is the ability to convey a wide range of emotions and do it subtly. Do it without being loud, overblown and overexpressive. It's the quiet changes you can see in the subtle shift of someone's eyes and their facial muscles. Another thing too, in Matt Damon's performance is at the end, when kind of like the climactic scene where Will is in Sean's office and Sean has Will's file in hand, and it shows the pictures of him in the hospital after his foster father's physical abuse, the bruises, the wounds that he was given, and you get to see glimpses of them. And when, you know, Sean really kind of gets in front of Will and says, "This is not your fault," and breaks him down emotionally, tenderly but forcefully. And again, as you know, Sean keeps going into, it's like, "This is not your fault, son." And the way Matt Damon's face shifts with each answer and gets slowly more and more upset until he finally breaks down in tears. That was a powerful scene, and Matt Damon nails it. And again, doing that, you know, those subtle changes in your facial expressions and slowly going from, you know, the cocky self-defense that we would all do. It's like, yeah, I know, you know, when confronting with something that's deeply personally traumatic, and your kind of defense mechanism is just kind of like the, you know, shrug it off, and to really show that you're being worn down to the bare emotion. It's like, damn, this is a performance. There's a reason this film was nominated. You know, for what was it nominated for? Yeah, Academy Award. This is 9 Academy Award nominations. There's a damn good reason for it. And these acting performances is part of it. And I also want to talk about Robin Williams' performance in this film. And again, I want to mention great acting versus good acting. Robin Williams, a lot of his character performances in film and television are kind of the same. Great actor, you know, even in films where, you know, he's being the traditional Robin Williams, Zachy Wayne kind of guy, he can do those subtle emotional things, you know, conveying anger, regret, loss, sorrow. He's really good at it. But 90% of the time, you see Robin Williams. You know, he doesn't disappear into the character. And that's when the mark of a great actor is when you stop seeing the actor themselves, and you only see the character. Dustin Hoffman is great at that. You know, certain actors can change the tone of their voice, their speech patterns, their body language. That's hard to do, and the truly great actors can do that, where they just vanish into the character. And there are a handful of scenes in this film where Robin Williams does just that. You stop seeing Robin Williams, and all you see is Sean. And the scene in the park where he's wearing Will down and saying, "You don't know anything about life. You're not a confident young man. You're a scared, cocky kid." That's one of these scenes where Robin Williams disappears, and all you see is Sean. And it's performances like that that make me love this film, and make me love certain films, you know, more than others. Yeah, this is one of those films that if I was trapped on a desert island, I would want to have this film. I couldn't narrow it down to top 5, but probably put this in my top 20. Yeah, I could probably put Good Will Hunting in my top 20 films of all time. One of those films I just can't stop watching because the performances are just so good, and the writing is solid too. I mean, one of the things it was nominated for was the screenplay. Does it even say that in the back? Golden Globe Award winner. Yeah, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, best original screenplay. So, yeah, and for those guys out of the gate too to do that, that's impressive too. Anyway, that's my rant on Good Will Hunting. As always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting. Pun.